it was always about providing an experience to the people of Australia and, gratefully now beyond.
In this episode, I'm joined by founder of KX Pilates, Aaron Smith, an award-winning fitness innovator and entrepreneur who has built Australia's largest Pilates franchise of 75 studios across the country. We talk about building a sustainable culture, the challenges of the franchising business model, and how Aaron's values of adventure, freedom, and family drive his success. So, Aaron, welcome. Thanks for coming on, and how are you doing?
Thank you for having me, Joe. I'm not doing really well. I was just saying before, we've got a newborn in the house, so 3 weeks old, so sleep's a bit strained at the minute, and I've got two other kids as well, under 6. So life's busy for me at the moment, but things are going well.
For sure. Understand. My brother has had 3 under 3 during the COVID lockdown, so it was a bit it was crazy, but
insane.
Tell us a little bit. Let's get straight into it. I'm excited to have you on, and tell us a little bit about KX Pilates and what journey that you sort of took to get to the point of actually starting the business. Sure.
Tell me how much information you want to know. I'll start from pretty much the beginning. So I grew up with parents who, my father had a business for 45 years and really kind of ingrained into me that business was the best way to get ahead in life. So I always knew I wanted to start my own business from that sense. A little wisecrack when I was 14 over the dinner table about inheritance. I got thrown back in my face, and the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki got given to me the next day. Yeah, brilliant book, changed my life, and really from that point on, I knew that I was going to do something. What was the question? I was an overweight teenager. I had an eating disorder, compulsive eater. So I was massive into my sports, but then I'd come home and my mother's pantry was very famous among my friends, just full of absolute rubbish.
Yeah, right.
And if you drained it, it got refilled the next week. So it was a really easy place for me to bury my sorrows. Went through a bit of depression in my teenage years. And then kind of one day, I had a knee reconstruction at 17. Funny story there. I had my knee reconstruction and I came home the day the 2000 Olympics started. I sat on the couch for 3 weeks straight from like 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day to watch the Olympics day in, day out, and basically ate. We got up to 104 kilos. At the end of that, my parents had to restuff the couch because I indented it. and from my recovery from that, something happened in my hair, just a switch flicked to said, no more, that's enough. And from then on, I basically just became obsessed with fitness, health, diet, training programs, the body. I changed all my subjects at university over to exercise physiology, studied personal training, was a personal trainer at a gym in the southeast of Melbourne for a couple of years. And then I started traveling. I'm a big snowboarder. I was really lucky growing up that, winters would be spent up in the mountains. So as soon as I was able to, I jumped ship. I went over to Colorado. I was a personal trainer in the Park Height over in Beaver Creek. So that's where I really learned how to connect with the wealth and really schmooze the clients of the world that I suppose mattered over there.
Yeah.
And from there, I went on to London. London, again, personal training, similar to Australia, very saturated. Sports science, I was doing a bit of that back in Australia as well, and there's no money in that. So I stumbled across a studio in London, which was a dynamic Pilates studio. It was the first of its kind, very similar again to Australia. Pilates was at physio, backed rehab Pilates. So the exercise Pilates kind of was non-existent. Boutique fitness was just starting out there as well. And I really saw the success of this one studio. We had a couple by the end of my 3-year term, but our trainers actually at the time went out after they got skilled up and opened their own business as well. So by the time I left London 3 years later, we had probably 15 studios across 5 different brands, and all of them were the trainers that I worked alongside or I trained up.
And these were Pilates studios. These were the starting points of the KX brand.
Well, these were the starting points of that style of Pilates in general.
Yeah.
I always knew as soon as I walked into the studio, I loved the style of fitness. I loved the clientele. I was sick of training people, writing out diet plans in Australia, and then you tick the box on a Friday, you come back on a Monday to see them, and they've just eaten rubbish all weekend and drunk themselves silly, and you're back to square one. That classic case where you see a personal trainer with the same client for years and there's just no change because they end up being a glorified psychologist and a friend more than an actual trainer.
Yeah.
Where it was different in these studios, everyone was already fit and healthy. It hit that kind of middle to upper class where people really took health and fitness really important, put that first and put that in front of a lot of other things in terms of the cost that they would spend. And I just loved it. The music was pumping. So I knew straight away that that's what I was going to bring back to Australia, that style. And then so I started my own brand, KX. And the good thing was my boss over in London was never a trainer. She was just a businesswoman. So being a trainer, having the experience I had, I could really develop and grow the KX training method, as we call it now in Australia, to what it is today, with the help of, some really key staff. One being a girl called Amy Skinner, who I sponsored in 2011 to come over from London. She was alongside me over there as a training head. And, she now heads up our training department, actually coming up to 10 years next month for her in the business. So that's where we kind of started. I came back in 2009 in debt to my father.
Because your father did support you when you had all these bold ideas, right? With a loan, is that right? To get it all started?
Correct. Yeah, I came back and I was 20 grand in debt to my father. I went back to work in other industries just because I didn't want to go back into fitness until I had my own thing.
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks later, it lasted me, and I sat him down. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I wanted. This is my dream, basically starting my dream. And then, a couple of weeks later, we're in his bank manager's office and he was the guarantor for my first business loan. And then KX Pilates Melbourne was our first flagship store, opened in February 2010. So that's basically how
you started
to day one.
I'm interested in this idea, Aaron, and we're taking you back a little bit in the conversation, but this idea of the compulsion that you had to potentially to eat, and that sort of addiction that you had. And I wonder whether, you seem to be a very high energy, very sort of compulsive type guy. Have you switched one sort of thing to another? Is the business now your compulsion?
It's funny. Yeah. It's really funny to look at that. No one's probably ever asked me that question, but on reflection, I would say 100%. I'm an all or an off guy. I've got a switch in my head, and I'm either on or I'm off.
Yep.
I'm either training 100% and I'm eating perfectly, or I'm having fun on the weekends and I'm kind of relaxed. With business, it's either I'm working my absolute ass off, or I'm taking a little step back. It's, I fall in love with the business, I fall out of love with the business. And that's been constant over the years. I think with the highs and lows of business, there's things that you wake up and for months I'll be just completely energized, and all of a sudden I'll go into a bit of a flat spot where I usually my focus just shifts. And I think I'm just more mature now that I've never gone back to that compulsive eating position that I was in, and I've just channeled that focus in other areas of my life. And 2015 had my first son, so my focus went really heavily into my family as well. So it's a great insight.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, for some people, time on their hands can be actually problematic, depending on what they would end up doing. So you've obviously got a number of things that are really building some meaning in your life, and so therefore having time on your hands is not a problem, because you'll devote your energy in the right areas.
100%.
Yeah, that's great. And I noticed that you were talking about, bringing in key people that have actually experienced the I suppose the brand or the culture, so that they can potentially expand with you and grow the business. Is that how you talk about culture being king? Is that how you harness culture?
100%. Culture is all about the people and the relationships, and especially in a franchise business, when people are putting in, their heart and soul, their life savings, or they're risking a lot. Like, I had nothing to lose back when I started, and I take my hat off to all my franchisees now, who've got families, who have got mortgages, who have got so many other responsibilities that they're still putting on hold or to the side to really dedicate and focus. Back then, if I failed, like, I was in debt to my father. I was living in my parents' house for the first 18 months, driving my dad's car, paying myself $200 a week. If I failed, I was just going to go back to America and go snowboarding. Like that was a positive for me. That was how I had to look at it to kind of get through, to go, if I'm going to succeed, I'm going to go back and do it really well, and had great chalets and stuff, which was amazing because I did it last year on our 10-year anniversary. But if I failed, it was still a really good success for me, because I was just going to go, and I knew I was going to do something else, but going to go chill out, snowboard again, come back 6 months later, try something else. So, but it's all about people. My entire journey has been, and I always say, I get up in front of my entire network all the time and say, look, I started this brand. Yeah, I founded it. I brought it into Australia, but the people who now I'm surrounded by in KX, they're the ones that really grew it, that really brought it up to what it is today. And that's from the first follower who, I opened 3 studios with a girl called Ali, who's now, she's got 9 or 10 studios of her own now. Yep. All the way up to Selena, who's our CEO. She's been with us 2.5 years, who now runs the day-to-day of the business, who's just brilliant. And like everyone in between, I was so grateful. My wife came on board in 2013 and completely transformed the business in terms of the systems and the processes that we needed for the franchise to succeed. And she's, hats off, works twice as hard as I ever have in this business. So yeah, it's all about the people, 100%.
That's great. And do you think there's a conscious, tangible way, like we're talking to the business owner community right now. So is there a conscious, tangible way that you set about actually creating that culture, or was it just kind of the way you are? Yeah,
great question. So our values of KX, 1 being respectful relationships, 2 being vibrant positivity, 3 being going above and beyond, and 4 being evolution through innovation. And those 4 values are basically out of my personality. They're the things I live and breathe by every day, and I just fuel them into the business. And then from that, the people I hired were very similar people. So although the skill sets of, say, head office in terms of marketing, finance, and that are all completely different, the type of person we look for from, even our clients, a lot of our clients are all very similar as well, to our trainers, to our owners, to our key head office staff.
Yeah, right.
You can sit across the table from most people and go, do you have that KX, that spark that we look for, or do you not? And it's really, really obvious to see. And it's okay if they don't. It's just not the different place for them. Again, if we got recruiting wrong, it's which we have in the past. We've made our mistakes. Yeah. It's not long until it's really, really obvious for us that they're just the wrong fit. And it's really hard to say you're just the wrong fit, because they always ask the questions, well, how? But it's just a feeling. No different to a brand is a feeling. Culture is a feeling, and being the right fit is a feeling as well.
So imagine that sort of culture and being able to foster that culture organically allows you then to have a franchisable or scalable business. And I'm really kind of interested in the idea of this, how you were able to scale like you did. And obviously there are some certain products or services that aren't franchisable, and you don't know until sometimes you actually get into it. So, how did you work it out? Did you kind of just did you just kind of like go through it and then work it out that it is franchisable, or did you know from the start?
So, I mean, you got to have proof to market. So we had 6 company studios that were doing exceptionally well. Obviously, the first 2 years were really hard for KX. A, the boutique fitness market wasn't around. Mm-hmm. B, Pilates in the fitness industry just wasn't there either. It was all rehab. So we really had to break through a couple of markets, which took a long time, a lot of heartache and stress and energy and, ups and downs. But when we finally did, probably 2012, where the KX brand was really known in Melbourne, the 6 company studios were absolutely pumping. And also I learned from my time back in London, where those 5 trainers went and opened their own studios, that trainers, the mentality of a trainer is, there's ego behind it. There's a bit of arrogance to say, I could have done that. I was the same. I was working over London going, I could do this. This is easy. Like, you forget all of the things behind the scenes that is the business. Yep. You basically just think you turn the lights on, you teach a class, you go home, you make money. So it was a hard lesson for me as well in the first couple of years. The business wasn't like that. But a trainer mentality is that I always want my own thing. So that's why personal training studios I thought never worked, because they build up their clientele, they take the clients, they go somewhere else, or they open their own thing. They're successful straight away, and then someone does it to them later on.
Yeah.
So the great thing about KX at the start was no one could go anywhere else to have the same experience that KX was offering. Obviously different now with a lot of competition and boutique fitness. But the second thing is all of our internal, even to this day, all of our owners in our studio owners are either ex-clients who just loved the brand and wanted to do something, say, after a baby, or they wanted to change their careers from corporate into having their own business, or they were trainers. So it's literally a 50-50 split. And that's where I knew that all the internal growth was going to come from, because I saw that. See, in London, yes, all the trainers went and opened their studios. I had about 5 clients come to me and say, hey, I want to open a studio. I need a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew from that experience that franchising had to be the way to go if I wanted to grow the business around Australia. And really, when I opened Studio 3, 4, 5 with my business partner at the time, Ali, she was the one in the day-to-day business, allowed me to step back from the business and focus on the franchise documentation, legal, all of those manuals, etc., to really get the franchise going. So I kind of always knew it was going to be a franchise after the success, of the 6 studios and proof to market at the beginning.
It's an interesting dynamic, the franchisor and franchisee relationship, in the sense that the franchisee is actually, in a sense, a kind of business owner. They really are. And so they do have that entrepreneurial spirit. How do you balance allowing them to have input into the brand without actually killing off the brand and not maintaining
And you know what? It's one of the reasons I'm no longer CEO is because, I really believe strongly in focusing on what you love and what your strengths are, and getting someone to do what you're not good at. And running a franchise was not something, in the early days with the relationships and the personal approach that I had, I was really close to probably my first 5, 6, 7 owners. After that, you just don't have enough hours in the day to continue that. You've got to put people underneath you, and a lot of those people that had those personal connections, you start to get a bit angry or frustrated. They don't have the connection to you that they used to. So franchising is, I think, by far the most difficult business dynamic there is, because basically they had their own business in their own right. They've invested heavily in the brand. They basically run it. It is their business at the end of the day. But then they pay a royalty to me, and then I employ someone to then tell them the guidelines of the brand. So basically, they've started a business to then pay someone to tell them what to do, in a sense, which, that's just friction, right? It's friction straight away, which is why relationships are just so key, because I have to look at it as like a league and teams, right? Because teams make their own money with their membership base and whatever, but without the league, they have nowhere to play. It's no different to a studio owner. We are basically the league. So it has to be that mutual respect that without them, we cannot succeed. Without us, they cannot succeed. And that's where you have to start at. And it's really interesting. Greg Nathan, who is a brilliant franchise psychologist, owns the Franchise Relationship Institute. He has this fantastic basically process of a franchisee where they go through in terms of how happy they were in the beginning. They get to a stage where they're like, what am I getting for my royalties? I'm doing all the work and I'm paying you still. All of a sudden around to hopefully, a really mutually fantastic position where they understand where we sit and they understand where they sit, and then they continue their success. Or if they don't like it, then they kind of move on. And that's kind of that 5 to 7 year cycle of a franchisee, either getting out or accepting and agreeing and kind of realizing that, you know what, I don't want to go and do this by myself. I don't want to do all the other things that the head office support does provide. And the big brand on top really helps grow and develop and get people through the door.
That's great. Look, I'm very interested as well in taking a little bit of a detour into the family life. And I just wanted to sort of ask you whether there's ever been times where in your current role or previous roles where you felt like you've avoided the pursuit of something profitable to actually spend more time with the kids or Andy and or get the balance right.
Yeah, 100%. I've always, I think, I loved when I heard the title of your podcast. I was really excited. I've never done a podcast like this, but it was never about the money for me. So even back in the day, my father was helping me with the books up to 3 studios, and he's like, you're making some good money here. Why do you want to keep going? Why do you want to keep opening studios? They're stressful. Times 3 problems by 6 problems if they're company studios, and then imagine when you've got X amount more. So It was always about providing an experience to the people of Australia and, gratefully now beyond. But that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to reach as many people as I could. It was about helping people. My passions were in people and helping them succeed in fitness. It moved to helping people open their own business. And I've had owners in tears in their opening days because they never thought they'd own their own business. And it's just so grateful to see it. And it's such an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
But money was always the byproduct. I just think that the way I was brought up, and I did live a pretty easy life growing up. We were in that middle class. I went to a private school. I never wanted for much, but at the same time, we knew the value of money in that we just couldn't get whatever we wanted to. We really, had to work for it, and we worked at an early age. Everyone in my family, I'm the youngest of 5, and I think we were just taught in the right direction that, again, loving what you do and helping people, success will come from it. I went to, I had a nutritional multi-level marketing business. I did it for about 6 months when I was 18. I lost 20 grand or whatever. But I went to a conference in the States, and the late Jim Rohn, who's a big speaker over there, he's this quote stuck in my head, which was, care more about your customers than you do about making money from them, and you will be successful. So from that day forth, when I was 18, it's like, bang, I'm just going to find something I love to do and share that, and success will come. And that's kind of how I always positioned it. Yes, we worked our absolute arse off in the beginning. When Andy came on board in 2000, officially in 2013, I mean, she was by my side from 2010, 2011 anyway, when we first started. But we literally lived and breathed KX 14 hours a day, our social life, going out for dinner, would talk nothing but work. We moved to Sydney to open up the flagship up there for 18 months. So that was our life. As soon as Archer, my first son, was born, things changed for me. Like, although my father was around for me when I was growing up, he still went to work at 8. He still came home at 5:36. And my mum was the caretaker at home. And I really didn't want that to be in my life. So I was quite happy to. And especially, I think it's also in a franchise world where if I got to my goals and it took me a couple of years longer, but I did what I wanted to do and I took a bit of a step back and enjoyed my life and enjoyed my family, that didn't bother me. Even to this day, everyone's like, oh, you want 500 studios globally. Great. What's the date we're going to hit for? And I was like, I don't care if it takes me 5 years or it takes me 10. It's just a nice thing to go. And if you're constantly growing, then that's good. But and in 2018, my daughter was born in 2017. So then we had 2 on the cards. And that's when I realized, I didn't want to be CEO anymore. I wasn't loving it. I really was having sleepless nights. The politics of franchise were really getting to me. The personal relationships were being affected. And also with 2 kids, I wanted to step back and really give to my kids at a younger age. We were done at 2 until COVID changed that last year.
Time on your hands.
Yeah. Annie and I's roles changed last year. She had to be crazy in the business for 14, 16 hours a day. And I had to be basically full-time dad for 6 months. But we connected really, really well on a level. Obviously, 9 months later, a baby is born. But again, I just wanted to give back to my kids. I think since my son was born, I've had Mondays off. So that's always been with my kids. Yeah. And even now, it's just beautiful to have I was meant to go back to work this week, properly, but I kind of just pulled up on the start of the week and went, you know what, I can just do bits and pieces here and there, work from home for probably another good 3 months before I press go again and help Andy out. Obviously a newborn is hard work. And then we've got the other 2, rugrats running around, school pickups and kinder and sports and everything as well. So, it's a massive juggle, but it's grateful that I can do it.
How does the dialogue between yourself and Andy, how does it not become all about the business and, being consumed by that? Are you able to tune out, and are you guys able to, how does a husband-wife team work in a business?
You know what? The dialogue is, more commonly than not raised at a higher voice level than normal. Don't get me wrong, especially with kids in the house.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Back in the day, we used to, I think when I was CEO and she was head of marketing for a good 4 or 5 years, the tension was high because we practice equality in our relationship.
Yeah.
And at work, that's just impossible when I was running the business and she was running the marketing department. So we clashed massively back then.
Yeah.
And it was on multiple levels and it was on multiple days. And, used to the head office guys are rolling their eyes going, oh, they're having another fight.
We're on tenterhooks here. What's happening
correct,
at KX?
Correct. It was very much a family business. Now, look, and it's been great. We tried to sidestep Andy out of the business because of the kids probably 4 times, but with her skill set, it was literally only until 6 months ago when we had the funds to hire basically 3 or 4 people to cover what's in her brain. She's basically been the unnamed COO for the last 8 years. She's done everything from opening a studio, to marketing, to systems, to IT, to everything. So, so it's really knowing what your roles were. And then we literally had to sit down and go, right, you're great at this and you're great at that, and go, great, you own that. So I never really overruled her much in the marketing sense. She never overruled me much in the business making decisions from the higher end. And even now, like all the top tier decisions, although it is we see it as our business now, all the big top tier decisions now, the granular detail, she's still involved in advising the team. The higher, bigger things, Selena and I usually work things out. But at the same time, and she sits on the board, she has her own opinions, because the history is really important when you're making decisions about the future too.
Yeah, true.
So it's great to have her on board for history. And again, her brain just thinks different to anyone I've ever known. And immediately you go, hey, we want to do this, this campaign next month. And she'll just go, oh, no, you can't do that because this, but you can do this because the system will allow this and this. And they go, oh, shit, they would have gone ahead with it and then made all the mistakes down the track and screwed it. But it's amazing.
That's great.
She is amazing. But, and the success of the business is massively because of her as well.
So that's great to sort of have a chat about Andy and how much she's really helped and how meaningful the business is now with her involvement as well. And I know that you talked about innovation and your ability to, spend time in that sort of role of being more of an innovator. And I think Selena, who you hired as a CEO in 2018, has allowed you to spend more time in that. So could you talk to us a little bit about the stuff that you're innovating? Because I can imagine, I don't know, you haven't known you very long at all, but I can imagine you get excited about the things that you're actually working on. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, 2018, when I sat back and went, what do I love? What am I great at? The international expansion was coming along. I'm obsessed with growth. I always think if you're ahead today, more so than you were tomorrow, you're moving in the right direction. So, and Kaizen experience, KX, it's all about ongoing improvement, continuous improvement as well. So that's basically where my brain sits too. So the growth, the innovation is just something that is ingrained deep in me. So to head up that department was fantastic. And so it started with our custom weighted poles and dumbbells and stuff that we brought in probably 2016. That was nice, but really easy to copy, which, most of our copycat studios had done. But the real thing that probably was on my mind since I started KX was, because we were using a generic Pilates reformer. So for those who don't know, with 14 machines in a class, 14 people per class, 50 minutes, high intensity, back-to-back classes. We start at 6 a.m., 5 in some states. And we run classes all the way up to 8, 9 o'clock at night. So it's, 10, 14 classes a day, 7 days a week. But we were on a generic Pilates machine, which was one of the best in the world from Balanced Body. We slightly customized it for our workout, but anyone could have got that same machine. Anyone could have slightly customized it.
Yep.
So you had a lot of that. And what happens, again, you're seeing a lot here in the boutique fitness industry. With a franchise, once the great sites are snapped up, people don't want to, if they don't live in the outer suburbs, they don't want to go there. So it's just easier to start their own thing in a great suburb or an affluent suburb close into town as well. So we've got a lot of our trainers who couldn't get the franchise that they wanted to, have gone out and opened their own studio in the independent space, which I think is fantastic. It's going to be interesting to see where they sit in the next couple of years as the Pilates and the boutique fitness industry really consolidate, and the big brands, I feel, are going to take over, similar to the gyms back in the day. But what I've always wanted to do was to make our own specifically customized machine for KX Pilates that no one could copy. So 2015, 2016 is when I kind of started out on this quest. I went to a manufacturer in China. We worked really heavily. 3 prototypes later, we released, I think, 55 into market at the end of 2019 into our company studio, so we could monitor and help and and really control how that would see. But it was still a kind of a test phase. Unfortunately, we were using the best of the best. Like, I look at it as cars. We were driving a Porsche. I went to get a Hyundai, right, or a Great Wall from China, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So the quality wasn't 100% there, and I wasn't confident to roll it out to my entire network. Now, in the beginning, I went to my current supplier in Balanced Body in America, and because we were small, we were only at 20 studios or 30 studios back then. They're like, look, we are a generic Pilates company. Our manufacturing lines are the same thing over and over and over again. We just can't put a little order for you in. Yeah. You're not big enough, basically. But, fast forward to 2020, at the start of COVID, I wasn't happy with what we had produced. I was really, with help of my Australian distributor, who I'm really close with, and that's basically Balanced Body in Australia. So Ken, the founder in Balanced Body in America, is basically best friends with Chris, who's the founder of HF Industries in Australia. And I've dealt with Chris for 10 years, got a great relationship with him and his daughter Casey. And he's like, look, I think you can, we can convince Ken to do something for you now. So, after all the heartache, I reckon I put in $250,000 of R&D, lots of trips to China. What was it? 3-4 prototypes later. Ken finally came to the party, and for the last 12 months, we've really been working closely to develop what we now call the KX Former, the Balanced Body KX Former, which got released into studios in December. A few tweaks later, our final product comes into studios in June, and then they'll be rolled out over the KX network in the coming 3 years, which is it's a big pill to swallow for our owners. A lot of them are just paid off their 5-year leases for their current machines, and then to be asked to then invest heavily again into the brand. But I really feel it's something where they cannot go anywhere else now to have the same experience with KX and the KX format. So it's been specifically designed for our workout.
There's it's a way of really future-proofing your brand as well, isn't it?
Correct, 100%. And to go international, we exhibited at the Singapore License and Franchise Expo a couple of times. We had some big investors coming up going, are these your machines? Or can someone copy them? And, there was the answer they weren't looking for. So the best part about Balanced Body is they had the amount of patents, copyrights, and all of that already surrounded by it. I've thrown the inventions over to them as well so they can protect it. They're really heavily on taking people to court if they try and copy. And that relationship now that we've developed with them is fantastic. And, now it's the first exclusive deal that they have done with any company in the world in their 50-year existence. So, we're really proud that a little Pilates studio out in Australia that started with one studio and still only at 75, which is pretty small compared to, Club Pilates in America is 650 strong.
Wow.
So, we're still fighting, they're fighting the fight down here, but it's awesome that they would see, that we're the company that I would want to work with to hold this exclusivity. So that's super exciting for us. And that's been a massive innovation for the business over the last 4 or 5 years, but just a smaller innovation. So I learned the hard way back in the day I opened a ballet bar studio under KX, a yoga studio, cycle studio, retreats. I thought I'd have this kind of broader sense of fitness. Realized the focus was always on Pilates. So as they say, where focus goes, energy flows, and the focus was always on Pilates. So the love weren't given to any of those other brands.
Is it the focus on Pilates because of the love of Pilates, or is it the focus on Pilates because if you focus on too many things from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense in terms of specialization?
Both, 100%. Well,
that's a great answer.
Yeah. The entrepreneurial mindset of me was like, hey, nice, new, shiny things. What are we going to do next? But I realized that innovating within your business is really the key thing. So our systems, our processes, our app, the things that we're bringing on board, our client engagement, all these things that we can adapt, improve, innovate on. Our training department is innovating. Like we've bought everything online now. It's an Australia-wide academy that our trainers have to go through before they work. So we are always innovating. We're always looking to do better. But yeah, probably the biggest one was the KX Former of the last 5 years for sure.
That's really cool. I'm super interested on people's impression of business owners that have got a brand out there, pretty successful. And I just wonder whether in your mind there's a gap between the impression that people have on the perceived financial success that you've had as a franchise versus actual reality, particularly when you've got, say, 20, franchises out there, as a starting point, which for a lot of people would sound like a lot. But can you talk to us a little bit about the hard work, the toil, what goes on behind the scenes, and how, it's not always as rosy as it looks from the outside?
No, it's not. It's not. And, PR has a big role to play there. Media has a massive role to play there. I mean, the truth of the matter is, to grow a franchise, you need a minimum of a 10-year time frame to really start making any money. So, and I'll run through it briefly, but I mean, you've got your proof to concept. So you're opening your stores, heavily invested in opening company studios. So that was us for the first 2 to 3 years. We grew to probably 30 studios, and in the franchising world, my opinion is that up until about 30 studios, you can kind of be that mum and dad franchisor. You're working every day in the business. You've got a really small team, but you're doing most of the grunt work. Very similar to what we were doing. Andy was heading up the IT, the marketing. We had one girl who was under operations, and I was the CEO / founder / still training / doing heaps of stuff, moving into states to grow. So it was heavily time invested. Sweat equity was there as well. You start making good money at 30 studios, then all of a sudden you realize, shit, this thing's going to get a bit bigger and I can't do it all.
Yep.
So then you've got to hire a team.
Yeah.
So in my experience, again, between 30 and about 70, every dollar you put into that business, you're throwing out at growing the team. I think we have like 20 or 25 people in head office now. So, you see all this money coming in with franchise fees and stuff like that, but it goes straight out to selling it. We pay like $600,000-$700,000 in salaries now. So perception is a funny thing as well in a franchise, because media grab that revenue figure of the whole business.
Yeah,
like we're on track
turnover
last year to do 30 million, and we only did 20 million and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, as a franchise model, we take 8% of royalty of a studio. So yeah, the business as the KX brand is doing that. But am I making that? Absolutely not. Very, very small. And then from that 8%, I've got to pay rent of head office. I've got to pay all of my staff. I've got to pay, everything that goes with running a business.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where I say that it's really, I only in the beginning had a number of 50 studios to get to. It's funny. I was set up with a coffee with Janine Ellis when I had about 25 in her office. And she's like, what do you want to get to? I was like, 50. She's like, you're an idiot. You're not going to make any money at 50. She's like, you really need to hit 70 before you can start thinking of making anything. And how right she was. So that was really, really cool. And then I did have a COO for a time there who didn't work out, but he did teach me that, international was something really positive on the cards, and KX would really do well overseas with his experience in the Asian market and beyond. So that's when we started looking at a few other bits and pieces here and there. But it's been really, it's that classic case of that 10-year overnight success story. Grind. But obviously from 75, you've got the head office then to grow exponentially. So we churned through a bit of our team members last year with COVID. It affected everyone every way. We had to hire basically half of the head office again at the start of the year. Selena did an incredible job, and the people that we've got on board now are just absolutely brilliant. And I'm really confident that the team now, we can grow to 150, 200 in Australia. In every 25, 30 studios, we just bolt on another BPM, business performance manager, to help those studios out, to give them that support. But the hard work has been done. Obviously, there's always hard work to come, but the real grind is over for the franchise. And it's like, and again, 10 years to grow a franchise, 10 years to make money from it. So it doesn't happen overnight. And I think people go, hey, I want to franchise my business. It's like, well, and again, what's your reason for it? Because if your reason's to make money, you're better off just keeping company studios. If the reason for me was it's the best way for me to get around Australia and really, create that buzz and that atmosphere and that feel that I'm getting to people and helping people, and also, helping people start their own businesses and become financially free as well is really exciting for me too.
Yeah, it's interesting. The word affluence didn't always come from money. It just seems that people have actually put money in and combined it with the word affluence. Affluence is just an abundance of riches, right? So I know that you value freedom as an example. So could you tell me how you resonate with the idea of being affluent in the sense of having an abundant life?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I've had two values. One is freedom. And I've just gone absolutely blank now. I say this all the time. Family is there.
Yep.
Freedom and adventure. There you go.
Yeah, adventure. Yep.
Freedom and adventure, and with family, basically. Yep. So freedom to me, I was always a bit of a free spirit growing up. My parents allowed me very early on. They gave me the power of choice in my own life. I was never forced to do anything I didn't want to do. And even like after school, I didn't have to go to university. I didn't have to do anything. So that freedom to me is probably more important than anything. 2012, 2013, we were in a lot of financial strain. I got a bit in trouble with the ATO. We didn't pay our BASs and other sort of stuff on time that you learn the hard way from. But financial stress was probably the worst stress I've ever dealt with. And I never wanted that to happen again, because it really encroached on my freedom. So finance for me is really, and abundance is freedom. And freedom is being able to not go back to work because I've had a child. It's to be able to pick up my kids from school. It's to be able to go, hey, I'm going to stop work tomorrow and I'm going to go down to the peninsula, or I'm going to have a holiday and I'm just going to go for a month because I can. And you know what? We don't go on holidays and not work. That's just not us. We will still work most days. Bali's a big ticket for us, obviously pre-COVID, because at 3:00, 5:00 here, so work shuts off in Australia and we've got half the day to do our own thing, but we work most mornings. So I couldn't say I've gone on a holiday and done nothing. The only time that happens, me and my wife spend about 4 or 5 days every February around our anniversary, and we literally try and go offline.
Switch off, yeah.
But that's the only 5 days of any year in the last 10 years we've done that. So, but freedom is control for me, and I'm a big control freak, and I like to do that. And again, I could be earning twice as much money as I'm now if I stayed as CEO. Like Selena's got a very, very nice salary. She works her ass off. Like she works her absolute ass off. She's fantastic in her role. I wouldn't be very good. That's why I got out of it. But at the same time, if it was all about finance, I'll still be there. And I think another thing to do with finance is that I learned really young to live below my means. We still pay ourselves a really, really small salary, and we invest half of our salary. And we've learned to really live off, not much every week. I've been wearing the same clothes for a very long time. I go shopping once a year. We probably spend most of our money, if anything, on travel, because, that hits that adventure part. Of course. We love snowboarding. We love Colorado. We love America. We love, beach holidays. So, and again, spending that with the family and the friends, that's really important to me. So at the end of the day, you go, what's it all for? And I think at the start, when KX was growing before kids, it was like, it's all for KX, it's all for our lifestyle. But then you have kids and it's just all for your kids, it's all for your family.
Of course.
So now it's just an avenue that we can have that freedom and have fun. And that's at the end of the day, have fun and be happy.
That's awesome. So in terms of, wrapping up, I just sort of wanted to know what keeps you up at night at the moment. And I know that I noticed that you probably everything. Well, actually a child, that would be one. But
yeah,
but I also know that you've got some expansion plans, and you've just recently, don't know how recent this is actually, but in Indonesia, you've got an agreement that is taking place and taking shape.
Yeah, we've had a studio in Indonesia for a couple of years now.
Okay.
She was meant to open a couple more last year and then start franchising as a master franchisee over in Jakarta. Yep. Obviously, they got absolutely pummeled by COVID.
Yes.
No government support. My partner Tata over there, she's just been hit with everything. She's got family illness. Her partner Bobby's still in Singapore. They haven't seen each other for 12 months. Like I was talking to her the other day, and this girl's been hit with everything. So look, they're slowly picking themselves back up off their feet now. Or Indonesia in general, I think a lot of businesses have closed, but she'll start to grow and start selling franchises. The good thing is, like most of the world post-COVID, is that the fitness bubble is there and it's about to boom. So that's there. China, we signed a JV for China last year.
Has there been any strained issues with respect to the political tensions that are going on between Australia and China? Has there been any issues from your side?
No, I think in business, you just ignore I've been ignoring politics my whole life. And it's great that I have a business partner. My business partner, Tony, over there. So he's actually a Canadian citizen, but born in China and lives in China. So he's got that international kind of twang to his growing up as well. So he's kind of half Western, half Eastern, which is good. But look, we've got 12 studios over there at the moment, but they're in all different sort of models. So we've got, and again, Tony's influence in the fitness industry over the last 20 years. He's owned a lot of gyms and yoga studios and personal training studios. And he's just trying KX to see where it might fit outside of the standalone model that we have here. So we've got a couple of standalones, but we're trying in the rehabilitation sector of postnatal. There's a huge industry over there for that. You've got women going into these centers for like 3 months after they have a baby just to recover. So, and I think there's about 3,000 centers across China. And I mean, 26 million versus 1.5 billion or whatever. I mean, it's just a completely different world. So we really have to respect that he knows that market best and just a trial. But that's really exciting. There's huge growth plans there, obviously, being China and being that mass market. And we've got inquiry at the moment for like the Singapores and the Canadas, and we're really just waiting on the right people. We're not really going out saying, hey, we want to flood this market. We don't want dots on the map. We can open another studio in Sydney and support that much easier than we can in one in New York or one in LA, just for, I think that comes down to a bit of ego and arrogance for brands to go, hey, we're in all these countries. But as a franchise to service those places, it's really tough. So you really want the right business mind, the right partner, the right funding to back that person, and also the right fit for the brand. Yeah, my partner in Indonesia, she lived in Australia for six years. She loved KX. She had that connection to Melbourne. She speaks fluent English. She's, was living in Singapore at the time and moved back to Jakarta for it. So everything kind of aligned in that sense. And we're just trying to find those right people for the rest of the world. So, but again, if it takes us a couple more years, it takes us a couple more years. It's not our sole focus still, or majority focus is Australia and growing Australia, giving back to our current owners.
I love the attention that you're giving the brand and the patience that you're willing to take with the expansion. We can feel, well, I'm sure the listeners will hear the passion. It's not that you don't want to grow. Of course you want to grow, but you want to do it in the right way. And you
know what? I think I've heard that many times of, why don't you get investment? Why don't you, grow 5 times faster? And we're opening between 15 and 20 studios per year, and it's been like that for a couple of years now, and I think that's going to probably get up close to the 20. But it's a nice spot. You got other brands opening a studio a week. It's like it's just crazy, and the people aren't getting the support that they need. It's just not a transactional franchise model. Is not what we are. No. Longevity is our business model. We are here in the long run. We want our owners to be with us for the long run. We want them to be as profitable as possible. We don't want to just open, 500 studios to then close down 200 in 3 years' time. Like, we don't make our money from franchise fees. It's really the longevity of the royalties and making them successful. And that's kind of how we see it, which is why time's not really a huge thing for us.
Thanks, Aaron, and I'm just super honored and proud to have had you on the pod. To be honest, it's a little indie pod at the moment, and we're getting it up off the ground. And I hope I asked some questions. It was sort of unveiling a bit of a different side of you, and I'm sure the listeners are going to really enjoy it. But the last question that I have for every single guest that I get on is, what spirit animal would you be, and why?
Spirit animal.
You can remove the spirit if you want. It can just be an animal.
Yeah, look. I think I have to say lion. I think you can't go past the lion. I'm a control freak. I like things the way I like things. There's multiple animals that would be tasty under the lion, which I think would be good. You're fast. King of the jungle. Dynamic. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a good answer.
Well done, by the way. Well done. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I hope that this one was enjoyable to listen to and there were some moments of value. If you have resonated in any way with the sentiments of this podcast, we would be delighted to direct you to our website, www.itsneveraboutmoney.com.au, for more free resources and education aimed at improving your capacity to make sound financial decisions for the benefit of your family. We wish you every success, however you define it.